Well, it finally happened. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I didn't think it would. When reports first started to surface last week that a Manhattan grand jury would hand down an indictment against former President Donald Trump, I thought that the political and public opinion blowback would be so bad, Alvin Bragg would abandon the effort, especially in light of the fact that most legal experts, both on the left and the right, came to the conclusion that the case was very, very weak if it was going to be based on what was being said to be the reason why Bragg would seek an indictment. But late Thursday afternoon, March 30th, reports came out of Manhattan that that is exactly what went down. A grand jury has brought charges against former President Donald J. Trump. I said in previous videos that we will have crossed a river that we will regret having gone over. I still hold that to be true. I wasn't able to put out a video last night when everything was happening due to family commitments, but I've got some thoughts on this, and I want to touch on them. They aren't necessarily a repeat of, news items that are already out there. These are just more from the heart, more a discussion about where I think we are because of all this. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to the electronic front porch and let's talk. Now, as I said, I'm not necessarily looking to go back over every detail in minutia. There have been content creators out there, excellent, excellent folks who have been doing that for the past 24 hours, and I salute them. A tip of the hat, so to speak. Um, and they can do it far better than I ever will be able to. But I will hit the highlights for maybe those who aren't aware of what's going on. Late Thursday evening, March 30th, it was announced that a grand jury had handed down an indictment of former President Donald Trump. Reports are, as it stands right now, they came back with 30 different counts of business fraud. At the heart of this indictment is a charge that Trump engaged in campaign finance law violation when a payment was arranged and delivered to porn star Stormy Daniels by then Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. What happens next? Well, Bragg's office, the district attorney for Manhattan, is in conversations with the Secret Service to make arrangements for Trump to come to New York City to be Mirandized, in other words, read his rights, fingerprinted, have a mugshot taken. Now that's going to be quite the picture. And then be arraigned before a judge. In other words, the charges are read to him, he enters a plea. Where do I think this leaves us as a society, legally, politically, and overall as a country? Well, let's get into that. As far as the society is concerned, this is going to do nothing more than continue to inflame passions that are already running red hot. We are seeing the country divided. We're divided over so many different things. And now a wedge is being driven into the heart of that division and it's being spread open even further. This is just going to make that chasm more like the Grand Canyon. And from a societal standpoint, there is now the recognition by folks on the left and the right that we are in what is called a cold civil war. Now, that term civil war has been thrown around for quite some time. Tim Pool has practically made it famous for every time he uses it. You swear between using his name, the next thing you hear, Civil War. He may not be wrong. Fortunately, at this point, thank God, it's not a shooting civil war. We haven't had that on these shores in over 150 years. Thank God. And may it never come to that. But society as a whole in America will become even more divided by this. Legally speaking, this is probably the best and most recent example of the idea of a weaponized two-tiered system of justice. For many years now, it has been argued, and I think convincingly so, that there are two sets of justice in America. There's a set of laws and justice and how you're treated that's good for one group, and another set of laws and justice and how you're treated for everybody else. And if you're in the everybody else category, it turns out that justice comes down more heavy on you than it does this other crowd over here. They seem to skate by with a whole lot more, get away with a whole lot more than you and I do. This is the first time in the history of the American Republic that a former president of the United States has had charges brought against him that could wind up in a conviction that puts him in jail. This is unheard of. This is territory we are crossing into, or to go back to my original analogy, a river that we're going over. And we're going to regret crossing this river. This is not good. This is the sort of thing that happens in third world banana republics. And the entire world is looking at the United States right now and laughing, snickering up their sleeves that the great democracy is now doing this to itself. In other words, its justice system is going after people that it doesn't agree with politically. And let's be honest, from a legal standpoint, that's what this gets down to. People don't like Donald Trump. People inside the Justice Department don't like Donald Trump. People inside the Manhattan DA's office don't like Trump. Not all of them, because there's a great division inside the Manhattan DA's office over this whole thing. That's been reported by many different people. But from a legal standpoint, there's justice for the in crowd and there's justice for everybody else. I feel sorry for Trump in that respect, which is kind of ironic in one sense. I'm feeling sorry for a billionaire who's been around for years. Yeah, I do. Because lay aside everything else about Donald Trump, he's an American. He deserves the presumption of innocence. But we've got a legal system right now that's trying to take him down for really, in the opinion of many people, nothing. And the frightening part is, if they can do it to a former president of the United States, they can do it to anybody. If ever there was a time for people to stand up and cry out, this is it. Politically, this might be the only bright spot in all of this. In its strange, very counterintuitive sort of way, this is going to redound to Donald Trump's benefit. And I'll tell you why. Because most people right now are not tuned into politics. Thank God. Bless their hearts. There's enough going on in life. This is one of those sewer-filled areas they don't need to go wading into, at least not until the right time. They need to be worrying about, making a living and putting a roof over the family, making sure there's food on the table, paying the bills. All that's hard enough. This is the sort of thing that'll make your brain go crazy, which may explain what happened to me at one time or another. But at any rate, most people aren't paying attention to politics. But when they see something like this, they start looking around and ask themselves, really? We're going after a former president of the United States over what? And if it were an issue that he were a former president being charged with something, that'd be one thing. But what makes this stick out like a sore thumb to most Americans is the fact he's a former president who has declared his candidacy to seek his party's nomination to be president of the United States again. And now, 17, 18 months from an election for the next president, he happens to be indicted for something that happened 7, 8 years ago now that really doesn't amount to a hill of beans in the opinion of most people. That sort of thing stands out in the mind of most Americans because they look at that and go, I don't understand the law and I may not know everything about this issue, but this just smacks of being a political indictment. This smacks of going after your political enemies. And that is going to redound to Trump's benefit. Now, a couple other points on the political side. If polling comes out next week that shows that Trump's numbers go up inside the GOP nomination fight against people like the would-be candidacy of a Ron DeSantis, an already declared Nikki Haley, or others, this just might scare them out of declaring a candidacy, or DeSantis at any rate. It might also scare off some other people who are thinking about it. Tim Scott, Asa Hutchinson, Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo, etc., so on. But there is another way of looking at it. It might very well be, regardless of poll numbers that will come out next week that are gauging the public's opinion about this whole issue as it relates to Trump, it might very well be that a lot of Republican politicians decide they're going to get in. Well, guess what? That still redounds to Trump's benefit. The reason being, remember how in part he won in 2016? Divide and conquer. The anti-Trump vote couldn't coalesce around one opponent because there were so many Republicans in the race. Donald Trump could win with anywhere from, call it 30 to 40% of the Republican primary vote in each state. And he went on to win the nomination quite easily. The same thing could happen here. There are so many people that look at what's happening to Trump legally right now. They decide to get in. They split the anti-Trump vote. Trump still wins. So like I said, as crazy and counterintuitive as it sounds, it might very well be that this whole thing redounds to Trump's benefit. And to be perfectly honest, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, for the country as a whole, where does this leave us? Well, as you might suspect, I don't think it leaves us in a place that's very good. I adore and revere the institution of government, as it's one of those institutions, my personal belief, that is recognized by God to be necessary for the functioning of a society. Notice I didn't say that it was very godly a lot of the time. I just said it happens to be recognized by God to be something that a society needs to function. The other two institutions are the family and the church. I revere the institution of government. I've studied it all my life, watched it all my life. This is breaking my heart. One of the ironic things about Donald Trump is how people confess through projection. They accuse Trump of violating norms and tearing down traditions. How many of those have been done against Trump? How many norms have been violated about how we handle former office holders? How many traditions have been just shredded in the name of trying to get political advantage over this man? And in the meanwhile, the country loses some of its uniqueness every time that happens. And now we've crossed a river and we're not going to be happy when we land on the other shore. This is going to open the door to go after politicians of every stripe, every political party. And then it also begs another question. Why stop here? Let's go back, 10 years, Obama, 20 years, Bush, 30 years, Clinton. How far back do we want to go with this? This is what we're opening the door for. This is not good. It's my prayer that we find a way to resolve these differences, heal the nation, and move forward together as one people. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That's my thoughts on the whole thing. What do you think? Do me some favors, as always, as we get ready to wrap this up. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. We'd like to grow this thing into something magnificent, and we could use your help doing it. Number two, if you have friends of yours that you think would enjoy this content, please feel free to share this video around. I'll take all the help I can get. As I often say, I'm a one-man band. Number three, hit the notification bell. I want to make sure that you're always aware whenever we post a new video on the channel. And number four, hit the thumbs up button. It's Friday night. I'm going to raise a glass. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm your front porch conservative. I'll see you next time.